During 1924, the decision was made to add a new fighter to the RAF. It was to be an interceptor with a focus on its climb rate. This was a little unusual as range was often considered one of the higher criteria to accommodate patrols. The Ministry had the Rolls-Royce Falcon engine in mind for the fighter. The Falcon would evolve into the Kestrel. The engine for the fighter would prove to be a little trickier than expected. The air staff had made allowances for a radial or V engine. At this point, Rolls-Royce did not have an engine suitable. The Mercury 3 radial was put forward as an option. The problem in part was its weight. During this period, the cylinders were cast individually. Bristol, however, was not the only company in the game. Their Type 107 Bullpup would be going up against Hawker, Gloucester, Vickers and Westland. The Mercury was in short supply and a Bristol Jupiter 7 engine was fitted to the Type 105 Bulldog. This was flown in May of 1927. It used a metal frame, the wings and fuselage were fabric covered rather than metal. It held its fuel tanks, of which there were 2 in the upper wing. The landing gear was fixed and its armament was 2 Vickers machine guns that were fixed to the side of the fuselage. These fired between 2 of the cylinders and were synchronised with the propeller to not destroy it. The Bulldog did better than expected and outperformed most of its competitors. The Hawker Hawfinch was the only real threat. The Bulldog Mark II was ordered and it would compete in 1928 against the Hawfinch. In the end, the contract went to the Bulldog. The Mark II was going to be the production aircraft, and so the Mark I had gone through some drastic modifications in an attempt to have it take the world climb and altitude records. Changes to the wings as well as the supercharged Jupiter 7 radial were fitted. The initial order was for 26 aircraft which would go to No. 3 and 17 squadrons. These would replace the older Hawker designs, the Woodcock. By 1930 the aircraft were filling RAF squadrons. No. 54 Squadron, operating from Hornchurch, would equip with the new fighter. The engine was well known and was reasonably cost-saving, something defence ministries look for the world over. Rolls-Royce would have the Kestrel engine out now, and it was in the Hawker Hart bomber and the Fury fighter. The engine allowed both aircraft a noticeable performance boost over the Bulldog. The Mark IIA would be released and did have some improvements, but even with several positive changes the speed of the aircraft remained the same. This did not stop an order for close to 90 aircraft in 1930 and a further 100 in 1931. There were attempts to improve the Bulldog. The Mark IIIA would lose out to the Gloucester Gauntlet, and in 1934 the Bulldog Mark IVA would be built with 4 guns, but again it was slower than Gloucester's new aircraft, the Gladiator, which won the contract. In 1931 a Mark IIA would be designed as a 2-seat trainer. It would be called the Bulldog TM, and 59 of this variant would be built. But by 1933 the fighter was being phased out. It was clear that aviation technology was advancing. The full withdrawal of the aircraft, however, would take until 1937. Then the likes of the Hawker Hurricane were coming into service. The Bulldog would receive some export orders. Latvia would be an early adopter of the aircraft, 2 would go to the Royal Siamese Air Force, Australia would take 8, 3 went to Sweden and 12 to Estonia. But it was the 17 that was sold to Finland that are notable as they saw combat against the Soviets when they invaded, and a handful of Soviet aircraft are credited with being shot down. The Bulldog was a solid design, but its life would always be a short one. Around it the aviation world was rapidly changing and it would never have been more than a stopgap.